This is New Patron Series 71B. I said I would discuss the rest of this saying where Yeshua said, "When thine eye is single, thy whole body is also full of light." So we're going to do that in this presentation now. Is this an authentic teaching of Yeshua? I think I've already said I think so. But let's look at it. Luke 11:34a in Greek says, "When thine eye is single, thy whole body also is full of light. But when thine eye is evil, thy body also is full of darkness." Now, to paraphrase in Hebrew or Aramaic and translate it, when thine eye is single-souled, thy whole body is filled with God's light. But when thine eye is double-souled, thy body also is full of darkness. The Greek word haplous, single or whole, for Hebrew Aramaic tom, which is whole, pure, having integrity, upright, innocent, without guile, is the one that's used in this statement in Luke. The Hebrew Aramaic word se'ef, divided, in a state of dualism, is what the idea of double-souled, having two-souled, means. The single eye was Yeshua's metaphor for making the Yetzer HaTov, or image of God, the Kabbalistic divine spark, sovereign over the Yetzer Hara, or evil impulse in the heart. That's being single-souled. To be double-souled or double-minded meant one held duplicity or dual intentions, good and evil, within the heart. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, says James in the first chapter. This is obviously a concept that was important to James as well as to Jesus. So this saying meets three important criteria for authenticity. It meets the criteria of orality, could be easily remembered and repeated. For vocabulary, it uses terms found in other authentic sayings of Yeshua, single and double-souled, light and darkness. It meets a criterion of uniqueness. The term single eye, Greek haplous, single, simple, does not appear in other Hebrew literature, although the terms good eye and evil eye and cognates of these are common. So this implies that it was a special usage of Yeshua. Yeshua knew, and James had learned it. In my judgment, it is an authentic teaching of Yeshua. Now, Matthew interpreted the saying according to Emission Theory, which was current at the time. Matthew's version says the eye is a lamp of the body. If your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, your whole body will be full of darkness. Therefore, if the light within you has turned into darkness, how great is that darkness? So another translation is the eye is the lamp of the body. The lamp is what gives light in the midst of darkness. Now, the writer or writers of Matthew understood spiritual sight as a form of emission. Quote, the eye is the lamp. For a lamp to produce bright light, the oil must be pure and unmixed. So if your eye is good, that is, you are undertaking good actions and intentions, your whole body will be full of light, God's light. It was thought by Hellenistic philosophers and most people in the ancient world that the mechanism of sight was by means of light flowing outward as a kind of emitted fluid from the eyes, where it made contact with sense objects and was reflected back. And this was called the Emission Theory. And it was advocated by Plato, Ptolemy, and many others. Here's a diagram of how it would work. As you can see, the fluid goes out of the eye to the object and is reflected back and interpreted by the brain. Here's a quotation from that I'd like to read you. The most significant recent contribution to the understanding of Matthew 6:22 and 23 equals Luke 11:34-36 in the Q document comes from Hans Dieter Betz in his article on Matthew 6:22 and following, and ancient Greek theories of vision. Betz claims to find in the pre-Socratics, in Plato and in Philo, the clues by which the enigmatic logion about the eye as the lamp of the body can best be elucidated. It was my good fortune to study with Betz temporarily at Harvard Divinity School when I was young. And he goes on to say, he directs attention to the following texts in particular. This is Journal of New Testament Studies that I'm quoting from. I put the reference below. 1. Plato, Timaeus 45b, 46a, in discussing the creation of the human body by the gods, Plato speaks of the, quote, light-bearing eyes, phoramata, and he asserts that within the human eye there is a type of fire, a fire which does not burn, but is, as translated by another scholar named Bury, it is mild. When we see this fire, which is both pure, the word is alekroes, and within us, entos humon, flows right through the eyes and out into the world where it meets the light of the day. Now, since like is attracted to like, the light of the eyes coalesces with the light of the day, forming one stream of substance, and then, to quote Plato, quote, this substance having become all similar in its properties because of its similar nature, like attracts like, distributes the motions of every object it touches or whereby it is touched throughout all the body, even unto the soul, and brings about the sensation which we term seeing. In fine, we see because we have within us a light that streams forth through our eyes. That is emission theory. That the saying of Yeshua seems to express in these Gospels. Now, Matthew's version versus Luke's gives us some kind of insight. But if your eye is evil, that is, having bad actions and bad intentions, your whole body will be full of darkness. Ignorance is the consequence of evil. Matthew says the light of the body is the eye, or the lamp of the body. If therefore thine eye be single, haplous, tam, perfect, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, and the word means dual, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. In Luke's version, the Greek word poneros, evil, could include the implication of personal will. And interior light is within the control of a person. Quote, take heed, therefore, that the light which is in thee be not darkness. In other words, you can control that. But Matthew's context connects the evil eye with hypocrisy and hub, or moral sin, on the part of the viewer. In Hebrew, the idiom a good eye implies a generous person, and a bad eye implies a stingy nature. Having a good eye, quote, is contrasted in Hebrew with having a bad eye. The two idioms have been a part of the Hebrew language from biblical times until today. Having a good eye, an ayin tova, is to look out for the needs of others and be generous in giving to the poor. To have a bad eye, ayin ra'ah, is to be greedy and self-centered and blind to the needs of those around you. These same idioms appear elsewhere in the scriptures where they clearly refer to the moral qualities of generosity or stinginess, and this is from a site called Our Rabbi Jesus, and the articles about a good eye and a bad eye in Hebrew. Now, Luke's version seems to be closer to an Aramaic meaning, where Yeshua's unique term tam, translated haplos in Greek, means the righteous behavior chosen by a tzaddik, and poneris implies willful unrighteousness. So here are a couple of charts illustrating how the Kabbalistic above and below could be united through Yeshua's spiritual halakha. So I've shown this diagram before in an earlier presentation, but this is an anatomy of the Kabbalistic self. The physical body of the flesh is the basar. The nephesh is the personality, which is who you think you are and others think you are. The neshama is what we call a soul. It can be made dark or luminous by the thoughts and deeds of the nephesh. So you can pollute your soul or you can glorify it. Ruach is the spirit or the matrix through which higher parts of your anatomy or your spiritual anatomy are coordinated. The chaya, the higher mind, or manas, is represented this way with another whole self, your higher self, your higher nature. And yahida is the divine self, the self that you are at the absolute root of reality. Here is another view of the Kabbalistic version of self or selfless. This is me in my flesh, in my basar. This will disintegrate and pass away. This is my personality, generally represented by my face. This too, this personality will degrade and dissolve and pass away. If I have a poor connection to my higher self, my higher anatomy, I'm not able to actually communicate with my lower self and my mind and my nephesh. But if I have made that connection strong through practicing the halakha of Yeshua or through other means, then I will be able to get intuition and get advice, so to speak, and impulses and motivations from my higher nature. Now, ruach, or spirit, is the androgynous realm of God. I say it's androgynous because it's neither male nor female. Yeshua said of the righteous people that after they are resurrected in the spirit, they are neither male nor female. They're neither given in marriage nor do they give in marriage. The next part, and the part that is what we call the soul, is the neshama. And that is the part that communicates directly to our mind if we are in tune with God. And then there is a higher mind, which is to the neshama as the soul is to the body. And there is a yechida, the divine spark that was implanted in all human beings according to Hebrew scripture and lore. And that is the element of our nature that controls reincarnation, or Gilgul, the return into flesh, and what comes back into flesh. And then there is Yachid, the divine Zelem, the image of God. I'm representing that just with the Yod He Vav He. And then the union of Yechida and Yechid is the bride and the bridegroom. That is the goal of spiritual halakha, is to unite the higher nature with Godhead. So let's talk about the Kabbalistic concept that's implicit in Yeshua's words. In the Kabbalistic thought of Yeshua's period, God's light emanated through the immortal neshama, later described in the medieval Zohar as containing the higher principles of Chaya and Yechida. Now, Yeshua's teaching was informed by Kabbalistic thought, as I've shown in my book, The Kabbalistic Words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. And the Gospel of Thomas, therefore, contains some very esoteric teachings intermixed with Gnostic teachings. Yeshua taught that a divine spark of Godhead, received at the formation, or Yetzer, as the image, is Zelem and likeness, Damut of Godhead, as we find in Thomas Logian number 84, that constituted the divine image that could illuminate every soul that submitted to God in sincere prayer and communion. Those who were men of flesh emanated no divine light because they had disconnected themselves from the guiding emanations of the neshama, making the inner as the outer, the above as the below, and the male and female into a single unity, was Yeshua's inner circle teaching about the necessity to achieve divine internal union. It elaborated his public halakhic teachings, which were a process of remedy for the moral and existential state of ambivalent duality characterized as double-minded or double-souled, Greek dipsychion, the ongoing conflict of good and evil impulses, the Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara, in each heart. Yeshua taught his disciples to make their hearts single, to speak and act without guile, and to, quote, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. In other words, be the same person on the outside that you are on the inside in order to strengthen the interior person with integrity, truth, and virtue. In other words, to make thine eye single.